Days after the Taliban imposed a ban on women aid workers, a senior United Nations official in Afghanistan met the Deputy Prime Minister of the Taliban-led government to discuss the ban on women and workers. The Deputy Head of the UN mission in Afghanistan, Potzel Marcus, met Solvi Abdul Salam Hanafi in the capital Kabul to discuss the ban. He also discussed other measures, including barring women from universities. The decision by the Taliban has prompted major international aid agencies to suspend operations in the country. According to the UN, this ban harms millions in Afghanistan and is preventing critical help from reaching Afghan men, women and children. The Taliban issued the ban on December 24th, allegedly because women were not wearing the hijab correctly, and said any organisation found not complying with the order will have its licence revoked. Aid agencies have been providing essential aid amid the worsening humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. Funds from aid agencies have helped Afghanistan's economy to survive before the Taliban takeover. But after August 2021, sanctions on the Taliban rulers were placed, and the freezing of billions of Afghanistan's foreign assets have already restricted access to global institutions. Now, all of this may raise many questions, but one in particular is the Taliban misusing foreign aid, or at least trying to restrict the ones that which are not gaining any benefit. So for more on this, we're joined by Lynn O'Donnell, journalist and an expert on Afghanistan issues and an author. She joins us live from London. Lynn, many thanks for joining us. Is the aid that gets sent into Afghanistan by the likes of the US, the UAE and others, is it being abused? And is the Taliban being given a long rope here?
A long rope indeed. It's been more than a year. It's been 16 or 17 months since the Taliban took over. And before they took over, they were well known as a very wealthy criminal cartel. They control global heroin supply. They've been moving into the production and peddling of methamphetamine for some years. They'd also been smuggling minerals and extorting millions of dollars every year from Afghans across the country. So they're a very, very wealthy organisation in their own right. Now, there is no accountability for where any of the aid that goes into Afghanistan ultimately ends up. So the United States and the United Nations have been sending in tens of millions of dollars in cash every week that goes into two banks, ostensibly for humanitarian relief. It's controlled by the Taliban. It is distributed under the supervision of the Taliban by small local NGOs that are approved by the Taliban, and nobody knows where it ultimately ends up. So people that I speak to inside the country tell me that it's all very well for the UN to send local employees along with the delivery of food and cash aid. But at the end of the day, once the supervision is over and the aid has been distributed, it is recalled in some areas by Taliban officials, as were, and it is redistributed by them to Taliban supporters. In other areas where the Taliban control the distribution lists, it goes directly, I'm told, to Taliban families and supporters. And it makes sense that they would do this because the Taliban are on pretty tenuous ground and they need to shore up and buy and ensure the support of their commanders and grassroots people who believed that they were fighting a jihad on their behalf. And the way to do that is to ensure that they can eat and heat their homes and survive.
So what is the kind of way out of this scenario, this logjam? Because obviously, should the countries that send the aid, should they stop sending it and say to the Taliban that they need to move on women's rights and on education? Is that the way forward, or how do you assess how they should move from now?
Well, there's no consequences for Taliban excesses, and as we know, girls and women have been closed out of school. Secondary schools have been closed since the Taliban took over, and for the year before that, because of COVID restrictions. So, how anybody ever thought that it was sustainable going forward that women could go to university is beyond me. There are no surprises here. If we look back at the last time the Taliban were in control of the country, which was 1996 to 2001, this was the same. We'll open the schools when the time is right, when we've changed the conditions, but that time never comes.
Lynn O'Donnell, journalist, author and Afghanistan expert, many thanks for your insight there.